Welcome to the Uncensored Self Podcast. I am your host, Ryann Gillen, and this is a space where women who value achievement, success, accomplishment, and wealth, but also crave happiness, love, joy, and deep fulfillment come to remember that we get to have both. Not by doing more, but by being more of who we truly are. In this show, we explore identity, energy, alignment, and embodiment because you didn't come here to follow someone else's rules. You came to right your own. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Uncensored Self Podcast with a new friend of mine. And you guys know I like to let my guests introduce themselves because bios are boring and awkward. But I met Toni through a friend and client of mine who's also been a guest here on the show, Roberta. And we got on the phone. We just had a really fun conversation. Like our energy just meshes. What I love about Toni's story and what I'm really excited for her to share with you all, because I was really enamored by it when she and I were chatting, is not only does she have like a really cool, badass like day job, you also have this beautiful podcast and you do a lot of consulting and you wear a lot of hats and you seem to do that in a really, really grounded way. And I'm excited to talk about that. So Toni, welcome to the show.
Hi, Ryan. I just was immediately drawn to you because, one, my brother's name is Ryan, but with one N. But the other thing is, so my whole life I was Toni and Ryan. So there was that duo. But you and I also share the fact that our names often get confused with a different gender. And so we're both badass women doing badass things. And I'm so excited to have you come into my life and vice versa. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So tell everybody a little bit about you. Like I said, you know, they're always, bios are awkward and weird. So I'd prefer to hear your story than read your professional bio.
I love it. Just wait till you're on my podcast and I make it real weird because I'll read it right in front of you. So yeah, my name's Toni Will. I am the general manager and governor for the Kalamazoo Wings, which is a men's AA professional hockey team here in Kalamazoo, Michigan. That is I'm born and raised here. And so I've never left my hometown. I fell into hockey completely on accident 11 years ago. So that's often a story that I get asked about, and one that's a great lesson for anyone to hear. In addition to that, I am a coach. I'm a lifestyle coach and a professional development coach. I quit drinking alcohol 5 years ago, and I help other men and women achieve the same goal of either reduction or removal of alcohol. And then that kind of spawned into a podcast, not about alcohol, but about lifting women up, because of what I do in my day job in a male-dominated industry. So Women in ... is my podcast. I think launched 100, or I've dropped 150 episodes in a year and a half.
So cool.
It's all interview-based, and cool. It's something I'm really passionate about. And then I did a TEDx. I'm a TEDx speaker. I've got a book coming out in August. And then
what's the book about?
It's called Rebellious Success. And so it is all about people. I would say mainly women, but I don't want men to like be like, oh, I don't want to read this. But essentially really kind of in midlife and thinking, I want to do something different. I just don't know how or where to start.
Yeah.
And my book is a mix of stories of my life, the not so pretty parts, and how I use behavior and different thought work techniques to move out of that into a better, healthier space. So yeah, I just kind of opened the kimono.
Yeah. I love that. That's amazing. And I love that title because I've resisted being a rebel. Because I'm not rebelling in the nature that rebellion is presented, right? Like I'm not a fuck you just to fuck you. Like I'm a fuck you because this doesn't make sense.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly how I am. I have a whole section in my book called Fuck You Fuel. So we are on the same page.
Awesome. So I interrupted your bio. You're writing a book and
it's okay. And the last thing, and then my bio is done because it is too much. Even some days I'm like, what are you doing, Toni Will? I have my own conference I started. This is the second year, called empowHER, because I'm wildly passionate about lifting women up. And so that is happening March 13th and 14th in Kalamazoo, Michigan. So I take all these things I'm passionate about. I created this conference. I bring in speakers to lift these women up, and it's all personal or professional. It's not in a specific line of business.
Sure.
Because a lot of times, as you know, we can fall into different, like I'm in sports, or you're working in real estate or dental work or all this other stuff. So the cool thing is at the end of the conference, we go to a Kalamazoo Wings hockey game, and it's green ice, and we are known for green ice. The game's already sold out, and it's 6 weeks from now. So
that's so cool. I'm like, should I go to Michigan in March?
You should come here and meet me in person. It's going to be fun.
I'm excited.
It's a lot of fun and awesome and learning, and I'm passionate about all of this stuff, so I'm like, "I'm gonna make it happen," so I do.
Good for you. And I think that's what drew me to your story was, you were like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this. But what I notice in the way that you talk, and those of you listening, I want you to be mindful of what I'm about to say. Toni's energy, when you listen to her speak, you would never know that she wears 87 hats in a day, right? You all have met someone who that person weighs 87 hats in a day. You want to be like, sit down, let me get you a cup of tea, put your feet up, take a big deep breath all the way into your chest. Have you had any fiber or protein today? Right? Like, you know that woman, and you don't have that. Like, you're just like, I just get it done. Did you come by this naturally? Did you come by, like, did you grow up with in a very aware household, or was this a choice you had to make for yourself, Toni?
No, I did not. My household was pretty standard. My dad was an entrepreneur. Not that you're asking this question. My mom was a school teacher.
Sure.
So,
Right.
very stable household. My parents were married 50 years. But I would say I came into this version of me when I quit drinking over
Okay.
5 years ago. I did not like my relationship with alcohol. And one of my goals in life is just to chip away at stigmas in anything.
Right.
And alcohol is very stigmatized. And so
Good.
I was like, I'm going to quit out loud. And so that's what I did. And part of quitting allowed me to, and by the way, I don't want to undersell this. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done,
Okay.
but it allowed me to become aware of everything that goes on. If people are listening to this, I'm pointing to my brain, the bionic hamster that lives inside her head.
Yeah.
And she's half cyborg, half hamster doing overhead presses in a hamster wheel.
Yeah.
And so I've really worked over the years to be more just stable. I wasn't crazy, but I was like what you're talking about, like hyper, like frantic.
Yeah, it's that frantic energy that as high achievers, at least for me in my journey, I thought that was just normal. Right? Like, well, what do you think? I'm spinning 800 hats. Of course I'm tired. Of course I'm exhausted. Of course I need a drink, and I quit drinking on accident.
Really?
Well, and looking back, probably did have an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, though I never really questioned it. But it was my partner quit. And then it was no fun to drink alone. I was like, I'm just going to open this bottle of wine and not drink it, and so and then sometimes I would still have a drink. We'd go out to dinner or my mom would pour a glass, but like we just went on a cruise and it didn't appeal to me once, not once, to be like, I want to drink. And it wasn't because I was like, I'm not going to. It just became less and less of a thing. It just became less and less of our lifestyle, but it was totally on accident for us.
Yeah. And you feel better, right? Like just more clarity.
Sure.
And I'm more productive. This is the other thing I like to point out because I'm sure this question will come. It's like, how do you do all of it? Well, when you quit something,
right?
Like, I'll just say something, but for me, it was alcohol. It could be watching TV. It could be social media. It could be so many different things. But on average, depending on the person, like my relationship with alcohol, I probably gave myself back about 800 hours a year.
Really?
When you think about thinking about drinking, actively drinking, and recovering from drinking.
That's interesting to think about.
Right. So if you think about I was Toni Party Time. Okay, Ryan. Like that's the name my friends gave me. And so
yeah,
I wouldn't go to think if alcohol wasn't involved, oh, I'm not showing up. Like it was just,
Right.
Oh yeah, it was, I was long overdue, but to give myself 800 hours back a year, I could write a book. I could start a business. I could do a conference. All these things that seem like pipe dreams.
Yeah.
You can make a reality.
I love that. I've been talking a lot about making space, and that's basically what you just said, right? So, a lot of my clients are people who are successful, but not fulfilled, right? So people who winning on paper, right? A lot of listeners here, they're winning. Their peers, their colleagues, their friends, all are like, she's got her shit together, and inside, she's quietly dying because she's miserable and she's unhappy. But one of the biggest excuses that she makes is, I don't have time. My life is already so full. And what I have been talking about is making space from committing to like overcommitting, right? A lot of overcommitment, say yes to everything, and make no space. But there's also the mental space. Like you just had a really good point. Like the amount of time that you were thinking about drinking. Did you guys hear that? The first thing she said, the amount of hours I spent thinking about drinking. How much time does the average successful woman spend thinking about all the shit she has to do? Just thinking about it, driving around, thinking about, I got to do this and I got to do this. And oh shit, I forgot to call that person back. And oh my God, I'm not going to make it till 10 o'clock. I'm not going to get into bed till 11 and blah, 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 blah. Like That, just giving yourself that back.
Yes. Yes. I have such a great example of that today. I was thinking about, I have a group that I'm coaching for Dry January,
Love
depending
that.
when the end of January is coming up.
Sure.
And I'm like, do I have a call with them on Saturday? And I was absorbing all this brain space. And really, all I need to do is pull out my phone or my laptop and look. And I'm
Right.
like, and it was just a good lesson. And I do have a call. I just didn't put it in my calendar. But I was rifling through going, okay, here's plan A, here's plan B, here's while I'm working out. Really, I didn't need to suck up all that brain
Thank you.
space in something so small and
Yes.
what I could do to tackle it real quick. It was just a lesson, but oh
Yeah.
my gosh, the mental real estate. Such a great topic.
Yeah, no, I call it mental gymnastics, like so often we think so much in our life needs to change. And if it's like, if you would just stop doing mental gymnastics while you're on the treadmill, while you're driving the car, while you're washing the dishes, while you're prepping dinner, while you're making a kid's lunch, while you're, folding laundry, whatever that looks like for you, like even just that space of the things you're already doing, we don't realize how much mental real estate is exhausting us, stealing our joy, keeping us stuck in habits of anxiety and stress and overwhelm and those spiral thoughts if we don't place them intentionally. So you mentioned when you said, different, you basically retrained your brain is what I heard you say.
Yeah. Oh, percent. I rewired it.
Yeah. What was that journey like for you?
Well, I would say this, it was hard, which I mentioned already. It was very intentional.
Yes.
And it was probably one of the first times that I came into it eyes wide open. And here's what I mean by that. It wasn't the first time I quit drinking.
Okay.
And so I quit drinking 3 years before that, and I did it I decided like, okay, I'm going to go to AA. And I'm not ashamed of that because I'm all about removing stigmas. And I spent 15 months labeling myself something that didn't feel quite right in the label alcoholic, but the community felt right. Like the people felt right. So, but I didn't understand the thought work.
Yeah.
And so AA stops at the behavior, and that's only part of behavior change.
Amen.
We need to move to the thought work. So what I learned is I'm able to stop the behavior, but the harder work for someone like me was the cognitive. And I needed a different framework. So that's the thing I did is I asked for help in a different way,
Yes.
a way that fit me. And this happened to be during the beginning-ish of the pandemic, this second time around of trying to quit. And so I just researched different ways to quit drinking besides AA. And I came up with a book was recommended via Google because an expert called This Naked Mind by Annie Grace.
Yes.
And I read the book, and there's this one part that stood out to me. And it was maybe instead of an alcoholic, maybe you're just living alcohol free.
Mm.
And I thought, well, that feels a heck of a lot better.
Yeah.
Because now it's my choice.
Yes.
And so that started me down this path of not feeling like I'm broken.
Yes.
And anyone who drinks alcohol or chooses to, it's a risk. And it happens to be an addictive substance, just like a lot of things we take in are. And so if I can not make me broken and look outside of me and look at my beliefs, then I can start to make that change. It's an onion.
Yeah. I think that's life, Toni. Life is an onion.
It is. It is. And I love belief work because we believe so much. And this, it gets kind of deep, but in the sense of
We like that here. Go there.
Great.
Go.
We come out of the womb and we're like blank slates.
Yes.
But then we're raised in a family that has beliefs.
Yes.
And those beliefs become our beliefs, whether we believe them or not.
Right.
And we don't question them. We just think this is the way the world is. And so I learned to question my beliefs because most of them were ass backwards.
Amen. Same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just ass backwards. And so I just went from there, and it's very humbling. But if you have a sense of humor, like clearly you and I do, I'm like, I want to have fun while doing this. And it gives me different meaning and purpose, which is why I end up launching my businesses, because I'm like, okay, I can help other people in this space that want to try a different way of thinking.
Yeah. I love that. It's actually funny that you bring up Annie Downs because I was in a mastermind with her. So I often tell the story. So I had a 7-figure year back in 2021. And the only thing I wanted was to, be in Russell Brunson's inner circle with all the other 7-figure business owners, right? Like that was the carrot. And Annie was in that room. And I think she was the level up, right? So she wasn't in the inner circle. She was in the, like you had to have a $10 million business to be in that one. And it was in a season of my life where I was still drinking and it was not I remember looking at it and seeing it, because she was up on stage presenting and talking about community building and what she had built and all the different things. And I was like, that's an interesting concept. Like, I remember I didn't have a visceral reaction like, oh no, I don't have a problem with alcohol. I was like, that's really interesting. Like, what would a life without alcohol look like? Like, I remember asking myself the question, but never really pulling the thread anymore from that. But I do remember her. She had beautiful energy. I can feel it now, like going back, but I don't know her, but we were in the same room and she spoke and her heart is big
Yeah.
and good and all the things. So that's fun.
Yeah, she
I
talks
didn't know
very
that.
highly of Russell and all that, when I've been in her masterminds or
Sure.
when I've been with her, and I'm honored she's gonna endorse my book. We were just communicating this week, so that was pretty
That's so
cool.
cool.
Mhm.
Congratulations. That's huge. She's got a really large platform. That's so fun.
Yeah,
I
I
can't
was
wait.
honored, so it's
I
funny
love that.
because this could be another rabbit hole, but publishing a book, and it's my debut book, and I gotta tell you right now, this week, I've really been struggling with self-doubt,
Mm,
and that's not something that normally I'm struggling with, but it
yeah.
is like it's terrifying
Yeah.
to put your
Mhm.
shit out there. Anyways,
It really is. Good for
yeah.
you. Thank you for sharing that. And the reason I'm thanking you is so I was coaching my clients the other day. I have two different group coaching programs. I have like business therapy, which is my core program. And then I have kind of my continuity program. We call it the mastery group. It's like, where do we go deeper in the work? And I was sharing a breakthrough that I'd had with my clients. And literally one of my clients stopped and she said, I'm just so grateful that you constantly share the journey in real time, right? Because I think it's extremely easy in today's day and age to scroll through social media, listen to a podcast amongst two successful women, right? To see our social media content, to maybe even attend a conference with someone and assume, she's got her shit together. This doesn't happen to her. They don't get it. They don't understand me. Like, we all want to believe that we are that our fears are special. And I want to be clear. I think we're all special. Like, I think that, God sourced the universe. We are all individuations of something much bigger and greater than us. So I think we are all inherently worthy, but our shit is all the same.
It
We
is.
all screw the same social media news feeds and feel the same insecurities as somebody else. And we look to the left and we look to the right and we look to what society tells us we should want and think. And we all judge ourselves against it. And then somehow we convince ourselves that, oh, well, Toni, because she, wrote that book and runs that business as a general manager of a hockey team and does all this other things, she doesn't have self-doubt anymore. So she doesn't get me.
Right. Oh my God. And so now I feel so seen and heard by you because that is
Uh-huh.
what happens. I told my client just in real time when I was coaching her yesterday, I just said, yeah, I've been feeling a lot of self-doubt. And I actually shot a video too for
Good
my
for you.
social media because I was like, this is important. And I had just
Yeah,
hopped off the Peloton, Ryan. I look like,
I love it.
but I'm like, no, I want to be real. And the real thing is right now, I'm really struggling with, the self-doubt around this. And I am human, capital H. I want to be relatable, approachable, and I want to help people understand that we all put our pants on the same way.
Right.
And yeah, and to come talk to us, the Ryans and the Tonys. And yeah, we
Yeah.
are successful, but it's yes and it's not either or.
Yes. Yes. And I believe that so much. Yeah, that's why I love to have these conversations because, again, when you just look at it through one lens, you see one picture, one piece of the puzzle. And like you said, we're all like people are onions, right? We have layers, we have belief systems, we have programs. Because, like you said, we have the belief systems that were programmed by our parents. But then also, and this, I want to go here with your career a little bit, we also then inherit an identity and belief systems around the career that we choose, right? So, if you choose, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs and real estate agents, right? Those are kind of the two biggest segments of mine. And both of those things come with pretty shitty identities, right? You tell people you're a realtor, you know, and if you like the way they think of themselves and the way the public views them, the public doesn't like them and the realtors know. That's the story that they think. I don't think that's true at all, but that's the story that's told on the internet, right? That nobody wants to pay realtors. They don't see their value. Why should you be paid a percentage of a home? Why is it any harder to sell a $3 million home? Is it a $300,000 home? It's like, yes, just like it is
Yes.
harder to sell. Anyway, not the point, but they get raked over. And so that identity comes along and then they feel like they're naturally fighting something that they may or not be fighting, right? Same with entrepreneurs, right? Most businesses close within the first 5 years. Female entrepreneurs are success rate is even lower, right? Women are starting businesses at twice the rate of men, but we're making a fraction of the money, right? Like there's a laundry list of woman entrepreneur, real estate agent, woman in hockey, that like we kind of get an identity. Let's talk about that for you. Like
Yeah.
what then beliefs came along with being a woman in hockey?
Well, there was my beliefs, which weren't were zero. And then there's been the beliefs that have been heaped upon
Right.
me by other people. Now, and that's another area I struggle with. And it's not so much. So let me back up.
Yeah.
When I was hired back in 2015, I actually applied for a job at a high-end fashion boutique and ended up the GM of a hockey team. It's a wild story. But that's why I tell people, like, when you're looking for a job, especially women, don't worry about hitting all the bullet points on the job rec. Like,
not even a little bit.
I would have never applied for this job. And the HR recruiter was like, listen, you're overqualified for the job you applied for, but I think you'd be a better fit over here. And I said, the hockey team? Because I grew up here. And she goes, yeah. And I go, they're still around? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, I don't know shit about hockey. And she laughed. And I said, I'm not trying to be funny. I'm just trying to be honest. And they're a talent-based organization. They saw something in me. She was right. Here I am 11 years later. I often say the best job I never knew I wanted. But I didn't know, and there's a naive part of me, that when I walked into hockey, I didn't know that my gender was going to become so polarizing.
Yeah.
Because, and here's why. In professional hockey, there's 3 tiers of professional hockey. There's the NHL, there's the AHL, and then there's the ECHL. And these are the leagues. The ECHL is the league the Kalamazoo Wings are in. And we develop players that move up and down this system. Okay, so at the higher levels, at the NHL, the GMs are generally involved, or are involved, not generally. They are involved in all the player recruiting, transactions, all of that. At this level, we are not. We're involved in the business side. So sales, marketing, community relations, public relations, broadcasting, the mascot, they all report to me. And so, but hockey purists, which are 20% of our fan base, they refuse to accept that. And so if the team isn't playing well, the head coach and Toni get attacked. And then because I am high integrity and honest, my story's always been my story. I didn't know a lot about hockey when I was hired. And so those words are often weaponized. They want a GM that knows hockey. Well, guess what? I've been doing this 11 years. I know a lot more now. And they'll listen to this podcast, by the way, because I have some real super fans. And that's part of the downside of a very public facing job. The trickiest part is I'm approached differently as a woman. And by that, I mean, because I'm a woman, some of these individuals feel like that they can come to me and talk in a way or cyberbully in a way that is not okay. They would never do it if a man were in the role. And so I've experienced a lot of that. And you know what? Kudos to anyone that has haters, because that means we've made it. But it does make it challenging, because one of the things that sticks with me is the negative, instead of all the positive, because there's so much positive I've done for women in sports, not because of my role, but because I want to lift other women up.
Yes. And what is that? I mean, because it is a fine line, right? Like, you are a woman in sports and you also want to do the job and do it well. But it like you said, it's not noticed, right? It is a reaction to some people. And, we could spend all day here, but what I realize is there are a lot of people in the world who are going to tell you, like, I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem, with, a woman in leadership. I don't have a problem with it. It's you don't have a conscious problem with leadership, right? Like, you didn't wake up this morning and think Toni Will should not be leading this hockey team because she's a woman.
No. It's a subconscious bias.
It's completely subconscious. Most people, I think, I don't know if they know that that's what's happening, right? Because consciously they would never. Like, of course, like, I have a mom, I have a sister, I have a daughter, I'm a woman. Like, I think there's some of that too, where it's like, I would never, but it's a subconscious belief.
It is. It goes.
It wasn't there. It was programmed into them.
Exactly. So I can, and I can look the other way on a lot of that. It's just the repeat offenders that can. Right. And so a lot of that has been through my own awareness and the work on me to be like, this is like, I can only control me, but there's this unconscious bias they have, and that's just what it is. So I decided to do something about it.
Yeah.
Because I want I don't want other women to feel this way. And not that I can eradicate all of it, but I can try and do my part to shrink it. So I created a resource group for women in sports at our league level. I've done it at the National Sports Forum on the steering committee. I do it at that level. I create a mentor-mentee program. And then I created my podcast. And my podcast is a total passion project. It has nothing to do with anything other than telling stories about the women in our lives who helped make us the people we are today while telling the person's story that's in front of me as well.
Right.
So it's fun, it's learning, and it's talking about amazing women because we all have amazing women in our lives.
Amen. Let's talk about that for you, because there wasn't a woman to look to, I imagine, right? Like oftentimes we're told, like my career was very different than yours. So I started in radio. So there's some parallels. Toni and I talked about this and we chatted before we scheduled the podcast was, she's, like she said, sales, marketing, broadcasting for what Toni is doing is very similar to probably a lot of what I did in my broadcast career, right? There's some crossover in different ways. But I was on, at the age of 21, an all-female sales staff for a top 40 radio station in Orlando, Florida, ran by a woman who, at the time, I don't think I realized how young she was, because, God, that makes me old. But she was probably in her 30s, right? And at the time, I was in my early 20s. A lot of the women in the team at that point in time are in their 50s and 60s. They're all women. They're all kicking ass. They're all they're all making a shit ton of money. And I'm this, 21-year-old girl from the Midwest selling radio. So I had women to look up to. And I also, again, there was some positive programming that came from that and also some negative programming that came from being part of that. But it did, I never had that where you were like, I don't know who to go ask this question. Cause I know if I go, what did that look like for you? How did you find that for yourself? Or did you?
Right. Well, there you have it. So I'm sitting on a panel at my alma mater a couple years ago, Western Michigan University, and they had this empowerment dinner, and they asked me to be one of the many. There was 6 female panelists. I'm like, absolutely, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah.
And they send the questions beforehand, and I don't love to prep beforehand for these things because I like to come authentic, and like you and I are doing right now. But I happened to glance at the questions, and one of the questions was, who is a woman mentor in your life? And I sat there, I'm like, I don't have any. I didn't have any. And so that is when I was like, I want to do more.
Yeah.
And so I had to create that. All my mentors have been men.
Yeah.
And starting with my dad, and he still is at almost 83 years old. And all my bosses have been men my whole career.
Yeah.
Even because I was in banking prior to sports, and I was running the Chamber of Commerce.
The only industry more masculine than sports is fucking finance, Toni.
Exactly. So I didn't have that, so I created it because I'm like, and you notice this through line. If it's not there, I'll create it.
I love that. Yeah. And I didn't even realize. So we're talking about it. I was like, I had always been surrounded by women, by powerful women. And it started as an athlete where, I played volleyball, which is really interesting because it is an extremely women dominated sport. Now I'm trying to get my son involved, and we're having an interesting time with there's not as much boys, not boys at little age. I actually literally this morning, Toni, was talking to a guy who runs a boys program here in Kansas City. And he was like, yeah, we don't often have boys teams before the ages of 12U, right? Whereas at girls, they're starting at 9U, 8U, 9U is the age that they're starting girls teams. And he was like, because unless your sister plays or your mom played or somebody in your family played, good athletes don't start with volleyball. They go play the regular sports, and then either they get burnt out because they started when they were 5, or they don't make a team, or they realize they're not going to be good enough to pursue that, but they're athletic enough, and then they find volleyball. So that's why it starts a little bit later. So it's a really interesting, because I do think that's why I had a lot of female mentors in leadership, because I played a sport that was both coached and played primarily by women, right? There's absolutely male volleyball coaches, right? But generally speaking, there's a higher percentage of women in that sport. So it started then, right? I had mentorship then, and then accidentally wound up on this all women sales team. And I've worked for some men, but I've always at least had other women at least the same level, if not above me, to connect with in all those different ways, even if I wasn't always working for a woman. So I hadn't thought about that from that perspective of there wasn't even another option for you unless you were to go find it.
No. And it's interesting how it's been layered in my life in terms of my relationship with women and how I'm working on that,
Yep.
because lifting women up is just such a big part of my mission, because then it kind of dovetails into my best friends growing up. There was 3 of us, and they both passed away by the time we were in our 20s, and I was the only one left. And so
Ooh,
there's a lot there, right? And so
yeah.
it's in an era when my parents weren't quite sure what to do. And so it can all come back together by looking in the rearview mirror a little bit, but then to say, okay, how do I want to change this? And how do I want to have more meaningful relationships with these amazing women that I'm surrounded by? And they may not be mentoring me, but they're walking alongside me like you are, or just saying, hey, introduce me to, and then we can start to lift each other up and build these connections. And another reason why I love podcasting so much, because I get to
Yeah.
do this.
Right. And I see, because I believe, so I had a pretty unhealthy relationship with men, which I didn't realize I had until I had a son. So this is kind of the again, subconscious side of, I think, what started my personal development journey, Tony, was I realized after I had Davis, it's when I started listening to books again, different things like that. And I realized my first thought was like, how do I not raise this kid to be a douchebag? Right. Like, I'm looking around the world, my friends, their husbands and in relationships they've been in. And I, aside from my father, who I do have my father and my ex-husband were really the only 2 men that got a lot of my respect. Right. Like, otherwise I found most of them to be pretty useless and inconvenient and in my fucking way. It was gonna be really hard to raise to raise a man if I didn't respect men. So I went to work on that. I didn't realize that's what I was doing, right? But it started with a study of masculine and feminine energetics and different things like that, understanding. I literally read Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, not so much to understand like the adult man in my life, but to understand the 8-year-old.
Yes, I can so relate
Yeah.
to that. And I talked about this on the last Women in Sports committee call, like, again, in the
Yep.
spirit of being vulnerable, which is I'm really cognizant of trying to bring my feminine energy to
Yeah.
certain meetings I'm in, because
Uh-huh.
I can tend to, because I am type A,
Yep.
and people describe me, oh, Tony, I love your style, you're no BS. But and I'm just trying to be my authentic self, but that masculine energy can come
Yeah.
out, and I have to work harder at my feminine energy. And I think part of that is
Yeah.
because
Yep.
I had so many male mentors, bosses
Right.
in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. No, feminine energy was a really big part of this. And I think I discovered it again in raising my son. And then, when my marriage ended, I wound up dating a man who has a whole lot of masculine energy. I've interviewed Derek here on the show before. And it's been a really interesting dynamic, and like how that shows up in work and how that shows even with my clients, because my clients have a lot of masculine energy. So I wind up shifting a lot into my feminine energy with my clients intentionally to give them space, right? Like, to see,
Yes.
because again, masculine energy, if we go back to human animal, right? Like, it is competitive in a masculine environment, because if there's only one, if there's only one prey and 2 predators, if we're hunting and there's only one whatever, if you kill it, my family starves. If I kill it, so, when I go into my masculine, if a woman's in her masculine, we naturally become competition. Well, when I started doing that, I very quickly realized, and we said this before we hit record, like, there is no such thing as competition at all ever. I don't believe that to be true. I believe that there, and not just in like there is more than enough, there's more than enough clients, but like, generally speaking, like, you are the creator of your reality, period, end of, and nobody else gets to dictate what you're capable of unless you give them that power, right? If you let the competition scare you, distract you, dictate how you show up in the world, that's a choice, but I don't think it's required.
100%. I always like to say this, it's an abundance mindset, right? Not a
Right.
scarcity mindset.
Right.
But there's only one Ryan
Right.
in this world. There's only one Tony in this world. And we can have similar personalities, but we're going to
Sure.
attract different people to our sphere, to our orbit. And
Hmm.
so, how does it hurt us to
Right.
support one another? It
Right.
doesn't. It
Yeah.
it only makes us better. As they say, rising tide lifts all ships. And
Amen.
so, and I think competition is really how I look at it is like, am I a better version of me today than I was a year ago or yesterday? And that's really where it lies. And so I definitely don't subscribe to that. And then comparison can really get tricky. And
Amen.
I see a
Yeah.
lot of women fall into that trap, and I'll call it a
Mhm.
trap, because it is like, if I find myself comparing, because it happens to all of
Of
us, I
course.
literally look at that woman and say, good for her. whatever that
Yes.
is. And then I asked myself the follow-up question, do you really mean that, Toni? Or are you just saying that to make yourself feel better? Do you believe that? And most of the time I do. And if I don't, that means there's something there that I get to work on.
Mm, so good. Yeah.
So,
I just talked about that in a podcast a couple weeks ago. The podcast, it's called What is Enough Enough? And I actually talk about that our constant feel of like, I need to do more, I need to have more, I need to acquire more, often comes from that comparison because we're looking around at like, oh, what does everybody else have? And am I better than that person, smarter than that person, more accomplished than that person? And so if I believe the answer is yes, then I should have what she has. And then we get into this comparison game. And so the shift that I made for myself in this, Toni, that you might have fun with is now, instead of looking for what does she have that I don't, I look for what do we have in common?
yeah.
Right? Like, what do I have in common with that woman? You know, like, and even if the only thing I have in common is that we're showing up and sharing our heart in the world, and so therefore, if her success is available because she's showing up and sharing her heart with the world, so is mine, right? And so I've really, and that's helped me so much. It's very similar to what you said, but it's just like, no, I'm
Yeah.
not looking for how is that person better than me or why what is wrong with me because she's farther along, which half the time we don't even fucking know if that's true. Let's be real honest. But second of all, it's like, okay, cool. If I can see that woman and she's doing something like what is because again, I believe strongly in energy and universal law and all of that. The only reason that person is winding up in my bubble, whether it's on my social media newsfeed or speaking at an event that I'm at or an article that I see, you know, as I peruse whatever I peruse, it's because something in it I'm an energetic match to. So I get to decide, am I an energetic match to the part of me that isn't as good as that person? Or is that person in my bubble, in my sphere, in my world to show me like, hey, that's what's available for you. Like, look at all the things you have in common with that wildly successful person. And the reason why I'm seeing them is because I'm getting energetically closer and closer and closer to being a frequency match for that level of success. And it totally changes the game with competition and compare. And the same thing, like when women are winning, you know, it used to be that when like I do this and I made this and I was like, meh, meh, meh. And now I'm like, yes, right? Like
Yes.
celebrate the results that you want because the only like to me, the story I tell myself, because nothing has meaning until we give it meaning, is the reason why I see this is because that's available to me and I'm so much closer than I realize that I am. And the reason I know that is because this person wouldn't be in my sphere right now if that wasn't the case.
Yeah, I love what you just said there. I mean, that could be a whole episode alone. Nothing gives it meaning is meaningful until we give it that
Yeah.
meaning. And
Yep.
we do that. I mean, yeah, we need to do that in our lives, but we give things meanings that we don't even need to. Like
Right.
make things good or bad or
Right.
you know, whatever, and different labels. And it's at what am I making this mean is a great question when if you catch yourself comparing or
Yep.
anything. Or if you're eating a bag of Doritos, what am I making these Doritos mean? Ask me how I know I asked that question because I do to myself. Why am I eating these Cool Ranch Doritos again?
Right. Right. I gotta tell you this about Doritos. So Doritos were a no go. We don't do red 40 in my house. We learned many years ago. My youngest she has an ADHD diagnosis. I try to be really mindful of not labeling her that just because of the identity piece. But so we've learned that removing food dye really helps with her behavior and her ability to focus. And Doritos, you know, have red 40 in them. And the kids, like my son is like, your kid, like, it's not my fault. She can't have red. Like, what do you mean there's no Doritos in the house? Well, obviously, like with all the changes happening and lately, they've started rolling out dye-free Doritos. And like my
They
son
did.
is living his best life. He's like, Mom, they have dye-free Doritos. Can you please buy me some Doritos?
They're at
And get
Walmart.
excuse to say no to Doritos for a really long time, you know, and I don't have that excuse anymore.
NKD Doritos. I buy them.
Yep. 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 Nope. So the kids are so excited. Like they're like, yes, please, Mom. And so they're putting their lunch now and they're living their best life with their dye-free Doritos. Toni, I could talk to you for days. Like we could do this for days in all the things. I want you to share again some of the things you have coming up. I think that's really important. If you do you still have tickets available for the event? Is that something? Because this is totally going to go out. You guys will have plenty of time to take a look at the event, find travel to Michigan, do all the things. I want to talk a little bit about the event and any other way that our community could get more involved, follow along, listen to the show, listen to your podcast, all the things.
Yeah. So yes, tickets are still available. I like to point out that I make my conference boutique style or design it that way. And what that means is I cap it at 100 and that's
Cool.
it.
Perfect.
I mean, for those of us who've been to a lot of conferences, like
Huh?
it can be really overwhelming when there are a lot of
100% my
people.
jam too. Yeah.
And I make it really affordable through my sponsors. So I want to shout that out. But everything is on my website, toniwill.com. If you click the top banner, empowHER, there's a special price for the hotel block, ticket price. All of that is there. And yes, tickets are still available and on sale until March 1st.
Cool.
So
Okay.
check that out there. And then my book is going on pre-sale actually at the conference. So we're unveiling the book cover and all the things that go with that, the pre-sale in Kalamazoo. And then I'm going to read the first chapter of my book where I get arrested. So
Yay!
if that's not enough to want to
Now
come.
we all need to go to the event to hear Toni read the first chapter of how she got arrested.
It is. And there's a lot of F-bombs in it. So
Amen. I mean, if they hang out here, they're good with your F-bombs, I promise.
Yeah, there's so many F-bombs. I think the first sentence is like, what the fuck am I doing? So anyways, so that's and it will be released August 11th.
Beautiful. And then the podcast is Women in.
Yes, women in ... And just the story behind the dots real quick. Instead of sports, because that's where I was starting, I said, no, I want to make this broader because of identities. And I'm much more than just a woman in sports. And so are my guests. So I took the sports out, threw the dots in, and I will ask you this question, like, how do you fill in those dots? And so it's really about all those type of things. I drop 2 episodes a week, and it's on every single podcast platform you could imagine. And also on my website, if you just go into ToniWill.com under podcast, you'll see it there.
Perfect. So good. Toni, anything else? Anything else on your heart, your mind that you feel called to share before we end our conversation today?
No, I love that you were put into my world.
Amen.
By Roberta, and just congratulations to you and all your hard work. And I just felt immediately connected to you when we met. And I'm just really happy for you and continue to do all the kick-ass things you're doing.
So good. I received that. Thank you. I receive it and I send it back. Guys, please go follow Toni and her work and all of her fun. My friend and client Roberta was on her show. I'm going to have a conversation with her here, I think, in a couple of months. And I'm just delighted and excited. And definitely the book sounds like so much fun. So find a way, guys, to go follow and support Toni, because that's what we do here. Toni, thank you for your time, for pouring into our community, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, thanks, Ryann.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Uncensored Self podcast. If this conversation cracked something open for you, trust that that's the work. And share this episode with a woman in your life who's ready to stop performing and start creating. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe, leave a review. It helps this message reach the women who need it most. Remember, you're the creator. The rules are yours. And your uncensored self, she already knows what to do. Keep leading, keep listening, keep becoming.